pages 618 and 619. And we're going to go through some of the terminology first, and then we're going to actually look at the strips. You also do have all of the strips in Schoology. We took a picture of it that looks pretty good to me. I think it represents the colors pretty well. So what we have is we have a control strip, and then we have unknown A, B, C, and D. And I want you to be able to look at a test strip and be able to acknowledge, if the person has a particular condition. So if we look on page 619, at the bottom, the table 41.1 there, what you'll notice is that there are 8 different substrates that are shown. Now your urine is actually a representation of your health to a certain extent. For example, if you have excessive levels of certain things in your urine, it's possible that it may be pointing out a condition. It's possible that it might not mean anything, but it's possible that it might be pointing to a condition. So let's take a look at the very bottom one here. Leukocytes, white blood cells. This is a condition called pyuria. When you have elevated levels of white blood cells, it will represent pyuria. Now, as you can see in the description there, it says possible conditions are urinary tract infection or gonorrhea. I don't think that's always accurate. I don't think we have to go that far. I don't know why they put that down. What it really means is that you have been sick recently, that's all. So your white blood cell levels, of course, go up when you're fighting something off, and some of those white blood cells may end up in your urine over the next few weeks, kind of a thing. So in the past, especially outside of pandemic times, students sometimes would choose to analyze their own urine, which is actually allowed. And sometimes students would come up with pyuria. It does not mean that they had gonorrhea. It just meant that they were recently fighting something off. I don't know. So you can look down the list here, and we can see, like, if you have elevated, if you go to the top of the list, elevated levels of glucose, glycosuria, also called glucosuria. I've also heard it called gluconuria, so that spelling would also be fine. If you have elevated levels of protein, proteinuria. Elevated ketone bodies, ketonuria. Elevated, actually if you have any blood in your urine at all, this would be called hematuria. We skip down to nitrites, you could have nitrituria. Bile pigments would be bilirubinuria. So for each of those, you can kind of go across and take a look at what the possible condition would be that would cause that problem, you see? For example, ketone bodies are usually elevated when you're breaking down lots of fats. This would typically be elevated in a person who's on a diet, like a low carbohydrate diet, for example. You'd start to break down more of your fat stores. So ketone bodies, which are acidic, are produced as a result of fat metabolism. So somebody who has, for example, a condition like anorexia nervosa, this is a person who should be eating more than they are. It's not just a diet, this is actually a condition, very hard to resolve also. In this case, a person like that having ketone bodies might be a more serious problem than somebody who's just on the Atkins diet or something like that. Glucosuria is the one that I think, if we looked at that, we could be pretty sure that this person probably has diabetes mellitus, because you are never supposed to have any sugar in your urine at all. And by the way, they used to test for this by dipping the finger in the urine and tasting it. Because your urine is supposed to taste salty and not sweet. So if you have any sweetness at all, it means you have sugars in your urine, which you're not supposed to have. So your body loves sugar. It's a great source of energy and calories, of course. And so if you're releasing sugars through your urine, that indicates that your body is overloaded with sugars. Your blood is overloaded. You're not metabolizing sugar correctly. And that usually is diabetes mellitus. But I must say, most of the rest of these could indicate various different things, depending. So your job, when you are looking at a glucose strip, when you're looking at a reagent strip, your job is simply to say, they have elevated levels of such and such. It's called this, so that's what we expect of you in lab. We expect you to be able to determine what is elevated and what the condition will actually be called. So from this point, let us take a look in Schoology. Yeah, of course. Take a look at Schoology. Schoology because we were trying to figure out how to do a urinalysis because normally students do it for themselves, and we didn't want all of those hands inside of the same canisters. We wanted to avoid that, so we are actually going to be doing the technique for you, which is very simple. You simply take a strip and dip it in, and you usually don't have huge levels of urine to work with, so we kind of have to bend it down and fold it in. One quick dip, and then you bring it out. So it's a very simple technique. Okay, so if you go into Schoology and you click on Urinalysis reagent strip, what you'll notice then is that there are 10 different conditions that are tested for. At the top, you have leukocytes. Elevated levels of leukocytes will make this square appear to be purple, you see? And that would mean that you have pyuria. Go back to your table on page 619, remember? Elevated white blood cells, pyuria. As you make your way down here, NIT is nitrites, right? Nitrituria. URO is urobilinogen, which is a liver enzyme. We usually don't pay super much attention to that. PRO is proteins, proteinuria. pH. So pH, take a look on page 618. It discusses pH. Now you'll notice that in this paragraph on page 618 where it talks about pH, you can actually have a range from 4.5 to 8. And the cool thing with this one is it actually measures that. So you see orange is a 5, a dark green is an 8, so you can actually measure that. Now having a different kind of a pH is not necessarily a bad thing either way. Urine does tend to be acidic, so a pH of below 7, but a pH of above 7 happens oftentimes too. Oftentimes, like vegetarians, for example, will have a high pH or alkalinity or basicity. Okay, BLO is blood. If you have elevated levels of blood, what is it called? Say it again. I think you had a cow?
Is it hematuria?
It is hematuria. All right, the next one is SG, specific gravity. Go ahead and take a look on page 618. There's a few paragraphs that actually discuss your specific gravity. What this is a metric that allows you to understand how dilute or how concentrated your urine is. A specific gravity of 1 refers to water. So urine is always going to have a higher specific gravity or like a higher weight than water. So you'll see the numbers go from 1 up to 1.030. Everybody see that? So this would basically be a measurement of how concentrated is your urine or how dilute. So higher numbers such as 1.025 would mean that you have lots of salts in your urine, for example, and less water. The closer you get to 1, the more dilute your urine. Okay, then we have a KET, ketone bodies. The next one is BIL, which is a representation of bilirubins or bile pigments. And then, of course, the very last one is GLU. What do you think that is measuring? Glucose, so glucosuria if you have elevated levels. All right, so my suggestion to you is you actually go ahead and write down all 10 of these from LEU down through GLU. Write down the three-letter or the two-letter thing that it is. Write down what it means, and then the next thing you should do is probably just write down what the condition is when that is elevated, for example. That is the standard thing. So GLU, glucose, glucosuria or glycosuria. PRO, proteins, proteinuria. Does this make sense, hopefully? So take a moment to do that, and Michaela and I will get your analysis strips together.